I've not met him before, but his story, well, I'm sure he can tell that, but he tells me this evening that he has been, I'm sure we've all been on narrowboats, but Graham has been on narrowboats for about 65 years. That's longer than I've been alive. A big hand for Graham. Well, almost.
Right, okay. Right. Well, thank you for that introduction. I don't think I really deserve it, but there we are. Just a bit of background anyway, before we get on to the pictures, which are a lot more interesting than looking at me. The selection of pictures you'll see, and not necessarily the order that I really need to reorder them, but put them in a different order, but nevertheless, they were set up for a talk for the WB&DCS Society, I don't know, 15 years ago, or something like that. But nevertheless, so they tend to be of the BCN, but they also go a little bit beyond that when I got involved with setting up a carrying company, which we did in 1965. So you'll see various shots, some of them in colour, well, most of them in colour, I think now, that we took of the various trips that we did, over a period of probably, I suppose, about 10 years really, before we had to change over to other forms of earning money. Well, not we earned an awful lot of it anyway. My interest in waterways started in the early 50s. The whole family, Derby family, and of course there was the Derby Canal, which of course there's not much evidence of in the city of Derby now. But in those days it was there, rather derelict, and it was one of the canals which was never nationalised, along with the bulk of the system, by the Docks and Waterways executive, which came after the nationalisation in 1947, 48, something like that. And in fact, actually, one of the civil servants said this is they were quite pleased they managed to miss the canal. They said, this is the one we managed to miss, and we were happy to miss. So I sort of saw this canal as obviously a teenager at the time, and I thought, blimey, there ought to be some way of actually reviving it. And I got involved with the Derby Canal restoration campaign, which was sort of like about 1956 or something like that, and with various other people, who, if I mention their names, you wouldn't know them anyway, and they're all dead. So they're all older than me. So, but there we are, and unfortunately we couldn't do it. There was a bit of a setup between Derby Corporation and the canal company, where basically the corporation saw the track of the canal as a way of actually developing what eventually became the city centre. In actual fact, one of the directors, or at least one of the chief shareholders of the canal company, happened to be the town clerk of Derby Town Council, so it was a bit, a little bit naughty really in a way. Anyway, so that was unsuccessful, and since then there's been a rumbling campaign, you might say, to restore the canal. And in fact there's the Derby and Sandyacre Canal Society, and they've got all sorts of plans for restoring what remains of the track of the canal, and then actually putting in a new connection through the town centre. Anyway, if you don't know Derby, I won't go into any more detail. In 1957, we moved, as a family, moved to Birmingham. We had been to during the war. My parents had been in Birmingham anyway. And I suppose I'm an official Brummie because I was actually born in Sutton Coldfield actually, but it's now part of Birmingham anyway. And when we got to Birmingham, I thought, right, well the first thing I must do is go on my bike and sort of wander around the BCN system and have a look at what was there. And of course there was, well, by today's standards, an awful lot of canal traffic, freight traffic, and also on the Worcester and Birmingham Canal. And I managed to take some photographs, and other people took photographs which I've actually used on the photographs you'll see. So some of them are quite historic by today's standards. But the Worcester and Birmingham Canal, and I used to go up and down there on my bike. I'm afraid that because taking photographs was quite expensive, and so I've got no photographs that I can actually offer you on that. But on the other hand, I mean, I can do a few recollections, and although there was never heavy traffic at that time in the late 50s up and down this canal, there was, it was certainly, it was still thriving after a fashion, and of course there was regular coal traffic that used to come from the Black Country coalfields down to Worcester Porcelain, and the British Waterways had a Midlands fleet of narrowboats, about 6 or 7 boats I seem to recall, and they used to regularly trade up and down all these locks and all the rest of it. And there was only one butty that was ever used, and all the rest of them were motors, which is not surprising really when you consider it, having all the number of locks. And so there was that going on. There was also Charlie Ballinger, who used to set up his own company. He worked for Severn Canal, I think, many, many years before. But when Severn Canal decided that they no longer wanted to run the Gloucester fleet of narrowboats, which was quite a big fleet, he bought quite a number, well, he's bought about 6 or 7 of them, I think. And he used to run Chocolate Crumb from Saul, from Cadbury's at Saul, up to Cadbury's in Bourneville. From the other direction, British Waterways engaged Charlie Atkins, and I think some of you would remember Charlie Atkins. And he used to bring Chocolate Crumb from Knighton on the Shropshire Union Canal, also to Bourneville. And then there was British Waterways used to take every now and again cocoa residue from Bourneville to down to Regent's Canal Dock, where it used to go to Belgium, and the Belgians are very well known for chocolate and this sort of thing. They could extract more cocoa out of the cocoa beans than Cadbury's could. Eventually that traffic was taken over by Willow Wren in the early 60s, and Leslie Morton, who was quite a pioneering member of the canal carrying fraternity, you might say, and he persuaded Waterways to allow his boats to use the northern Stratford Canal, which was open, but it wasn't in very, very good condition. And anyway, although they could load as much as Waterways could by going up to Bourneville and going back through the centre of Birmingham and down the Grand Union, it was a shorter route, but on the other hand it was less tonnage, and 40 tonnes on a pair was about the most you could actually do. So that was all connected with Cadbury's, who in actual fact have been staunch supporters of canal transport over the 1930s and before that, I think. And they were also into, they supported rail, anything but road really, basically. So there was that, and then there was also traffic from Sandwell Park Colliery, which is in Smelwick, wasn't smelly, through through the BCN, through Gas Street, and to Kings Norton Paper Mills, and quite a some reasonable traffic there. Kings Norton Paper Mills, which is at the junction, or was at the junction of the Stratford Canal and the Suburban Canal, and they had their own boats, but like a lot of companies in the BCN, they had their own boats, but they didn't have their own steerers. And so there were these companies that would actually supply tugs and steerers. So sometimes if you looked at, sort of in a list of canal contractors, it would be canal steerers, and you think, well, it was sort of canal steerer, but in actual fact, basically, it was having a tug, and that you would be able to tow whoever. A lot of coal merchants didn't have any; they've got their own boats, but they hadn't got motorboats and this sort of thing that they could do their own carrying with. So there was that. There's Charlie Ballinger, as I say, used to bring he used to bring chocolate crumb from Saul, and so there was quite a, by modern standards, quite a bit of traffic, but of course nothing like it had been from donkey's years before. So that was like the Worcester and Birmingham Canal, as I remember it, when I first, my first trip on it was with the IWA, which I joined in 1957. And you'll see some of the boats, well, a couple of the Joeys that we converted in a very simple way, I have to say. And the first trip we did with using one of the canal steerers, a chap called John Garrett, his motorboat or his tug, and it towed two of these converted Joeys, and you'll see that in a bit, sort of being converted. And we went to we wandered round at Bittle. I don't know whether you can still do that now. It was a bit tight, even though in those days, but we actually, I mean, his tug was only about 45 foot or 50 foot or something like that, but the Joeys, of course, were full 70 foot. And that was my first trip down the Worcester and Birmingham Canal. So there we are. Right, most of these, well, the original, well, the first ones are of the BCN, and this actually, this flight of locks, which you can see in the derelict condition, they're subject to a restoration plan, which might well come off. So I don't know whether anybody would like to make a guess of what that flight of locks is. Braidley, that's it. Yeah, it's Braidley. And so that's Braidley, again, about 1957, 58, something like that. So there we are. So.
Graham, excuse me.
Sorry, I'll move over to no, that's not photographs.
Do you want a chair?
Well, I'll sit down. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Right, carry on. Sorry. Right. Okay. Well, it's fairly self-explanatory there that the canal's disused, but not that much disused. And when eventually that became completely, well, it was just bulldozed over. As far as we know, the locks were just filled up with general earth and rubble and this sort of thing. And the suggestion is that, in fact, a large part of the lock structures, going down the flight, still exists. So, it shouldn't be a big job for the restoration. Anyway, so we carry on next. Right, it's near the top. Again, the paddle gear was there and all the rest of it. And, it would form, well, even now, it would make the, what was the Wednesbury Oak Loop Canal, which is now considered to be the Braidley Arm, part of at the moment we only go up there just for the hell of it, but just with a relatively small amount of money by modern standards, he would form another route through to miss out central Birmingham. Because basically you would come from Wolverhampton, depending which way you were going, Wolverhampton, Deepfields Junction, up the so-called Braidley Arm, just beyond Braidley workshops, and then there would be a left-handed turn, sharp left-handed turn, into the flight, down the flight, when you join the Walsall Canal, do a right, go down to the junction with the Tame Valley, do a left, and then you're straight off down to Salford Bridge and wherever else you want to go to. So there we are. Right, okay. Right, can we go forward a bit? Right, so British Waterways decided, well, they had round the Wednesbury Loop a little bit further on from the junction with Braidley Locks. There was another branch canal to Ocker Hill Workshops, and they dated from pretty well when the canal was first built. And anyway, at Ocker Hill, they were running Ocker Hill until about, I suppose, again, something like 1957, 58. But when they decided that they would actually get rid of the Braidley Locks, and also that I think there was possibly subsidence problems with the Ocker Hill branch, which was a bit further off, they decided that they would really basically close the canal short of the junction with Braidley Locks and create a new depot. And the depot still remains today, which is the gate making shop at Braidley. So here we are. This is I don't know what, it's a small drag line digging out the basin for just in front of Braidley Workshops. So there we are. Quite a big lorry, by this 5 tons, I should imagine. That's probably the most it's got. But there we are. So right, so there it is. So that's the beginning of it, and you'll see it's being dug out, and you'll see it completed. So let's try the next one. There we are. Piles being put in. This is became the turning basin, the Wigley basin. Again, well, it's self-explanatory. I'll try the next one. A bit more. I don't know whether they ever lined. I don't know whether it's clay down there or what, or whether they ever lined it or what. But anyway, another shot of it, another drag line. Slightly bigger crane, I think. Right, next one. And there we are, the completed thing, and those are the new workshops. Now, in actual fact, there's no longer the Braidley Workshops. It's now completely gate making. But at that time, they did boat, repairs and all sorts of things. It was a general workshop for British Waterways in the local area.
Boat building as well.
Sorry?
Boat building.
Yeah, well they did, they built one or two. And also they had on the second, I don't know if that was put in immediately, but you can see there's 2 entrances there. And the second entrance, they had a system whereby they could actually turn a boat completely upside down and then just weld the bottom, which made it a lot easier, obviously. Welding, so and obviously you haven't got to have anything inside the boat, but I mean we're talking about joey boats now, or just maintenance boats, and they had that for many years. But now, say the whole thing is all decked over, and you'd never know they're really. I think the docks are still there, underneath. I mean, if they ever wanted to use them again, but in fact, it's entirely gate making now. Next one. Right. Well, this is. Myself and a few friends who were also members of the Midlands Waterways Association, we got more and more despondent about the problems with, well, or the lack of, seemed to be, enterprise on behalf of British Waterways, trying to develop what the possibilities might be to actually develop canal carrying. So we thought, well, we were only young at the time, obviously, and we thought, right, well, we'll have a go at it. And after the disastrous winter of 1963, when everything froze up for about 3 months, Waterways decided to get rid of basically most of their narrowboats, and so there were a lot of narrowboats that were for sale, but were relatively cheap to buy. And so we, through the auspices of the IWA, managed to raise quite a lot of money, and we set up a company. It had to be, by the standards of the time, a public company, which meant that you've got to have, if you had more than 50 shareholders, then it had to be a public company. The same as sort of like ICI or some big organisation like that, but nevertheless that's the way we had to do it, which cost quite a lot of money, I have to say. But nevertheless, we managed to sort of get ourselves going. We had finished up with about, I suppose from British Waterways, something like about 12, 15 boats, I can't remember now exactly. And we bought a number of other boats from local carriers, some wooden, some, from ex coal carriers, coal merchants. And we thought, right, well, we can hang on to those and then sew them on, and people chop them up as pleasure craft and this sort of thing, and very, very basic ones by modern standards, but there we are. Anyway, this shot is the one of our first contracts, and this is on the River Trent, obviously carrying timber. And we were carrying timber from Newark to Leicester in connection with another company small company called Seymour Roseblade. And so we had the first 2 pairs we had painted up in new colours. These 2 are still in Waterways colours, but nevertheless, colours didn't really matter. It's a question of getting the cargo moved. How this job was done, the timber came in from Scandinavia anyway, Sweden or Finland or wherever, but anyway, it came into Hull, then by barge to Newark, and then we met the barge with 2 barges, as distinct from narrowboats, with our craft, and you'll probably see later on. I mean, it's quite a business actually doing it like plank by plank, and also you've got to take into account bills of lading, because this was going to a timber yard in Leicester, and they obviously got various customers, so you've got to make sure that you didn't get the various types of timber mixed up. So there we are. And this was 1965, so this is our first load. Well, his first major load. We did want to tow the odds and ends around the BCN beforehand, but there we are. So this is the Collingwood and the Achilles, I think. That's we had a royalty class motorboat, which you can see just, which we call the Linda. But in actual fact is the Victoria, that's still going around, and another of our buses, I think it's the Argon next door to it. Right, so back to the BCN again. Sorry about these, slightly out of order, but there we are. Probably 1 or 2 of you might remember this, but anyway. This is Anglesey Basin, one of the few basins in sort of the early 60s was still loading coal, this was near to basically, I'm trying to think of the nearest thing. Brown Hills, I would say, is the nearest town, and you can see the various chutes there, and you'll see something a little bit more sophisticated, although looking a rather derelict way. Anyway, lorries used to come along and obviously tip into the chutes, and of course there's no boats there at the moment. The open joeys you see here belong to Leonard Lee, who were one of the major carriers in the Black Country. This was for Welders Steel Tube, and Welders Steel Tube had a factory at Wednesfield, and Leonard Lee's, they had 2 or 3 tugs, well more than that if you know, and they used to take a train of about, well, maybe probably up to about 4. But that was the way things were done, generally speaking, on the Worley-Essington Canal. Ernest Thomas, that was another sort of canal steerers, you might say. They got their own boats, but on the other hand, they had 2 extremely powerful tugs, the Enterprise and the Birchells, which are still around to this day. One of them got a 6-cylinder Gardner in it. That's a 3-cut thing, anyway, but it's still working around. Anyway, right, next one. There we are. That's again another shot. They're not very beautiful. These are probably ex-railway joey boats, I mean, there was no attempt to obviously cross up this coal. It was just sort of like, just chucked in, and it only took a day to get to where it was going, which, as I say, was Welders Steel Tube. When we later on started carrying for John Dickinson's at Croxley Green, they wanted us to crop up because they didn't want the coal wet, because that caused problems with the combustion process. So there we are, but welders didn't seem to mind at all. Right, next. Oh, right. Yeah, again, I'm sorry about this jumping about. Most of you might know that. That's the Delft locks, yeah. Yeah, that was, yeah. I don't know what's coming down there, but anyway, I didn't take the photograph. It wasn't a pleasure boat route then, really, very much. And of course, when this was taken, the 16 locks were virtually derelict. So in actual fact, you couldn't go down to the top of the 16 locks at Stourbridge. It was, well, I remember getting involved with the IWA rally in 1962. And we were assisting pleasure boats down there, down the locks, and some of the gates would, we had to use sheets of tarpaulin and plywood and everything else. We managed to get boats down there, but it was a heck of a job, I can tell you. So that might have been taken at that time. I can't quite remember that. Stables are still there, which is quite nice. Right, go to the next. Right, now so back to Anglesey Basin again. There was a rail connection to this gantry arrangement where you could actually load, I think, about 4 boats at a time. And so there was a tippler just to the right, at the end of that, and there was a conveyor going up there. So there was this tippler which would turn a truck, a railway truck, completely on its head. All the coal would run into a hopper and then would be conveyed across there. I don't know when this was put in, but probably before the war, I would imagine. And so, of course, it was quite an efficient way of loading. And you can see, they used to do various sorts of coal there. Most of it was industrial, but there was some house coal going to, particularly the co-op at Walsall and Frankfurt at Walsall. There was quite a lot of coal truck that went that way. You see the wooden joeys there as well. The wooden joeys slightly more characterful than the steel ones, I would say, but there we are. Right, and then that bank you can see in the background, that is the dam to Chasewater Reservoir. which in actual fact I think British Waterways sold off to the local council. And so there's only a certain amount of water which that the Canal River Trust can now actually use off that reservoir. Right, okay, next one. Right, well, again, this is going to be mainly about VCN, but even so. This is Clayton's Yard, again, about 1957-58. Clayton's were carried liquid cargoes of tar and noxious liquids from gasworks from all over the Midlands. And they'd obviously, things were gradually drawing in by that time, but there was still a number of gasworks in the BCN Birmingham area where there was still, there was still quite a bit of heavy traffic. They had actually also carried fuel oil from Stanlow off the Manchester Ship Canal up to Langley Green, up the what we call the Crow, up the Tipsford Locks, and that carried on. I can't remember that because it finished just before I got really involved. I think probably about 1956 or something like that, 55, 56, something. But you can see the various of their boats derelict. I mean, they had a vast fleet at one time. Anyway, here, that's the Mole. And I think the motorboat in front is the Tally. I mean, the general atmospheric pollution around there, as you can get the general idea, was, this is the centre of Albury, was terrible. And you can see that the lady there has got a washing hung out, so, well, I don't know what colour it would be. I think it probably need washing again. But, the actual water was so polluted because there was a chemical works nearby called Albright and Wilson's, and they used to put an awful lot of phosphorus in the canal, and I mean, oh dear. And if going along there, if you're on a motorboat and you just caught the mud slightly, this miasma of whitish, bluish kind of smoke, you might call it, came off the... I mean, we've got to the stage where you couldn't, if you were towing anything, you couldn't see what you were towing. It really was bloody awful now. I mean, goodness me. There we are. Okay, next one. Right, this is their yard, which has now actually been... I mean, it's no longer obviously there, and the motorway was built over the site of the yard later on. That's the Dane, which is actually, most of their boats were built at Uxbridge, where the Clayton's boats were built. And in fact, all the boats they had built were wooden. They had the Dane, and I'm not quite sure what the other one was. It might have been the Dorset, but I can't remember. Dane, and there was another one. Sorry? And Dove, you're quite right, yeah. And from Cadbury's. And so that's the Dane. There was another Dane as well, but belonged to another company entirely. Philip Hutchings had the Dove. Really? I think he did, yeah. Anyway.
All named after a river.
Sorry?
All
named after rivers, yeah. Not only British rivers, but rivers all over the place, you know. I mean, there was a boat called the Umir, and I thought, what the hell is that? I don't know, it's in India somewhere, I think. Anyway.
He's still around, is that boat?
Sorry?
He's still around, is that boat?
Is it? All right, well, I'm surprised. Well, I mean, the thing is, with wooden boats, I mean, they only last about 30 years or so, unless you keep rebuilding them. If you keep repairing them, of course you finish up, it's a bit like your great granddad's hammer. It's had 3 new heads and 4 scales, you know, sort of thing. Well, I mean, that's the case with wooden boats. Well, it's true. And so, you know, when you actually have a look, and there's been 1 or 2 shots at Clayton's Yard, you used to see a boat drawn up on the side slip, and you think, oh, well, what am I doing with that? And then you go, you have a look next weekend, and they've taken half the side out, you know. And then next weekend, it's all rebuilt. You know, it's amazing. Yeah. Anyway, there we are. So, next one. Right. Right, well, I think everybody might remember this, also, well, not remember it, know where it is. This is Gas Street Basin, about 1957 or 8. The boat in the bar lock, which was then still a lock, now you just go straight through, is the Water Sprite, which British Waterways decided to do trips only in the summer, and I don't think they even served alcohol on the bar. I think it was just teas and coffees, and they used to put adverts in the newspaper for people to come down, and they used to run out to Hopwood or something. You can see, I mean, now it's full of boats, moored up, but there was there's a Joey there. I'm not quite sure. There was rather one of the things that if people wanted to go, wants to have their own cheap pleasure boat, they used to buy army pontoons, which were made of very thin ply, but very good marine ply. I mean, they lasted remarkably well. And of course, they were dirt cheap to buy, so all you did was put a conversion on. Well, that one hasn't survived very well, as you can see. It's pulled on the Bar Island. But, I'm not sure what the other boat is there, but anyway, you might see in the next picture. And the other interesting thing about this is that you can see Broad Street Bridge ahead. But you can see also the church, which was built on top of the canal, the Unitarian Church. And of course, well, the City Council actually wanted the church to remain, but they couldn't get anybody to take it over. The Unitarians were a rather declining sect, and they hadn't got the money to repair the church. It was built of sandstone, and the sandstone was badly affected by the pollution, but obviously it was endemic in that general area. The building, the chimney still is there today, and that building with the big black wall was Pearson Cutler's glass. The building on the right-hand side was the BBC Broad Street Studios. Well, that's disappeared, obviously. So there we are. Right, next one. Right, this is another picture of Gas Street Basin. This is looking the bar, which runs from there's now a bridge, a footbridge, to connect with Gas Street with Bridge Street, and there was this warehouse there with a rather fine wooden crane, which unfortunately, when they decided that they were going to redevelop the area, was never preserved. They ought to be preserved. I mean, it was a rather fine piece of machinery. Who it had belonged to, I don't know whether it was part of the Severn Canal Carrying Company's arrangements, i.e. the Shop Nestle Docks and Gloucester Road Navigation Company, I don't know, but there we are. The chap coming out of the tug there is a chap called John Garrett, and he was a canal steerer, and used to tow people's coal boats around, as nobody did. There is an icebreaker. I don't know who owned that at the time, and then these two boats are boats that the IWA had bought from a local carrier, and you'll see in subsequent pictures of them being converted for really basically members to have trips in them during the good weather. The chap there on the left is David Hutchings. He was very young at the time, and David Hutchings was responsible for the restoration of the Southern Stratford Canal, and later on after that the Upper Avon navigation. the bloke on the right is a chap called Michael McFarlane. Again, you know, these names may not mean an awful lot to you if you didn't know them, but there we are. I'm not sure that was one bloke in between. I don't know what he was. But, right, next one. Yeah, that was his took, Eric, John Garrett's son, Eric. Right, this is the bar lock in Gas Street, when it was a lock. Two sets of gates, because in general, you're locked up. I mean, there wasn't very much in it, so onto the BCN from the Worcester and Birmingham Canal. It could go the other way, so that's why you've got two sets of gates. There's that icebreaker there. There's a boat that's looking slightly heeled over. There was an arm just behind the stern of that boat which used to go under Gas Street and in fact up to Granville Street, and that used to be a lead works up there, but after that a firm called Fraley's, who were monumental masons, had their premises, and their basic office building still remains to this day, and so it predated them. But so much of their broken stone had gone into the arm, but in the end you couldn't float a boat up there very easily, so they used to have to barrel it over the road and down the ramp and then and into the boat you can see there. Anyway, there's one of the Joeys being converted in a very, very simple way, you know, for these trips which the IWA had thought was a good idea, really, to introduce the membership to the beauties of the BCN and also Worcester Birmingham. So there we are. Right, next one. That's, work in progress. Anyway, on the other side, of course, you've got Worcester Wharf, and the wharf was still used then, but not very much by goods coming in or goods going out. But in actual fact, it was quite busy on the other side of the, by road transport mainly then, coming in from Bridge Street and using the various warehouses. Well, you can see the buildings there. That's it. Well, I think that's the next one. Well, yeah, it's a work in progress, as you can see. Very, very simple. I mean, just bench seats were put in, and one of the cabins was converted into a kind of tea bar. I don't think there was any alcoholic things consumed, but there we are. Later on, we used to, this was before the department, it was the Board of Trade then, started to insist on inspections of boats and all the rest of it. And of course now it's, there's a lot of red tape. But, when we first started, we used to get a telephone call sometimes from the local mental hospital, All Saints, saying they would like to take their inmates out. And so they bring them all out, and which I thought was quite liberal of them. They bring several crates of half-pint bottles of light ale, and these blokes, they were all men. They weren't any women. And I used to chat to because the nurses used to look like prison warders. Then they used to have a uniform, brass buttons, and all the rest of it. And I remember taking one of these trips. Again, it was just, we were just towing a Joey, similar to this, obviously converted by that time, after a fashion. And he said, is it all right to speak to somebody? Yes, carry on, have a word with them, It's very interesting, this bloke down there. He used to be a wing commander during the war. And then, he'd say, why is he here? Oh, he chopped his son's head off with an axe. And this was after I'd actually, lovely bloke, really. That's why he did something.
Could I ask John on that? It's quite interesting because I know very little about wooden hull boats.
Yeah.
And yet it
There's
shows
loads
on
of
the
them.
near side, it looks like the boards run horizontally, and yet on the inside, is that another layer of boards that runs vertically?
Well,
Like double skin.
Yeah, but on the cabin boats, yes, you would get what they call shearing. So you get horizontal timbers, and then inside you get much thinner timbers running up, vertically. But on Joey's, they didn't do any shearing at all, so it was all,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Right, next. A bit of TLC here. We're getting, I think, trying to sort of fill the crack. Mind not the boats. I mean, even when you've got passengers in, I mean, the boats will only go down probably an inch, so nothing very much. These buildings on the towpath side, I mean, are still there. I mean, that one's all been painted white. The building on the left was the officer of the Sharpness, New Docks and Gloucester and Birmingham Navigation Company, which was the rather long-winded title of the owners of the Gloucester and Birmingham Canal. And then, well, I say, there was a building to the right that was owned by the British Waterways. And it was a lockkeeper's cottage, a waterway employee's cottage, and as were the rest of them, just out of the picture. Right, next. Just work in progress there. There's another picture of David Hutchings there. The buildings on the left, they're still there as well. They've all been knocked together and now form part of the Tap and Spile pub.
Yeah.
And so, because the church was built over the canal, Broad Street Tunnel, they still refer to it as Broad Street Tunnel, but in fact it was more of a tunnel in those days. And then on the left-hand side, you can see on the other side of Gas Street, there were some other buildings there, all obviously been replaced by a big tower block now, a car park. But that was a firm called Grosvenor Workmen, who were just general building supplies people, and very, very useful firm actually. You get pretty well anything there. They also used to be, you can see, I mean now there's a bridge, footbridge that goes across, and but of course there wasn't in those days. And in fact, any horse boats that used to come up, which they were still, the Birmingham Salvage Department still had horses in those days, and they used to have to go up the ramp enter the street and then back onto the towpath a little bit further down. But there was also a gentleman's urinal was right up against the wall. You can actually, I mean, it's all disappeared now, but you can see what it had been. And the BCN were quite happy with the City Council for putting these urinals up. They used to be on bridges, most bridges around the Birmingham area, because as long as it was liquid, the BCN were quite happy to accept it. It's true. As long as it floats the boat. Right, next one. Again, you see the IWA emblem there. That's Michael McFarlane. I'm not sure who the woman is. Well, they're still alive, but there we are. Just another work in progress. Carry on. Right. Well, this is on the summit level, Smellick summit level. Now it's completely changed because the motorway is built on top of the canal. And this is Ben Smith with the Gifford. And I just had to go along with the bike and this sort of thing, so I took a picture of him. And this is quite timeless, really, because it was about 1960, 61, something like that. I'm just guessing now, but it's about that time. And you'll see there's well, we'll go to the next picture. There we are. And the Gifford is actually being rebuilt and rebuilt again, I think, you know, this sort of thing. And it's, I think, is it based now at Ellesmere Port? I think so. But anyway, he was bringing the boat. And then he had a motorboat as well, but there was no point in taking a motorboat because he was just bringing a load of creosote or gas oil or gas water or this sort of thing, tar, various noxious liquids that the various gas producers produce. And this was from Smellick Gas. And Smellick Gas wasn't very far from Midlands Tar Distillers where they used to take the stuff. Midlands Tar Distillers being at the bottom of the Crow, or at the bottom of Albury Locks. And so it wasn't very far to Smellick Gas. And so, you know, really, basically, there was no point in taking the motorboat. So we just used the horse. So there's another shot, I think, after that. There we are. Yeah, that's it. There's the Gifford again. But I mean, that could have been, you know, anything from 1850 to, you know, 1950 to 19, well, as I say, it was probably, but I'm just guessing now, but 60, 61, something like that. But as I say, the whole view has now changed because the motorway is, you know, the whole thing's roofed over. But thing is with Clayton's boats, of course they were decked over, so you know, the family boats, I remember it was an exodus to a Birmingham Canal boat with a chap called George Page, and well, he had to have a menagerie on his pair. I mean, there were rabbits and chickens and all sorts of other things. It's amazing. And the kids thought it was great. You know, so they used to play on the deck of the boat. Yeah. All right, next one. Another shot there. Same thing, really, basically. Yeah, right. Well, that was that's the other. Well, Ocker Hill is beyond those council houses there. This is the lower, which is the Ocker Hill branch, the lower part of it, which was on the Walsall level, and that's Master's Coal Yard. And of course, there was very little in the way of mechanical handling in those days. It was all shoveling out, you know. That's why there weren't many obese boatmen, I will tell you. And but it's all house coal, you know, and often quite big chunks, you know. You can get in there and just chuck it out, you know, handball the whole thing out. And I mean, the arm there is still there to this day, and but it's all moorings now, of course. And they've got their own motorboat. I can't remember what the motorboat was, but I say a lot of these coal merchants didn't have their own, apart from Joey's, but they didn't have their own motorised craft. Right, next one. Right, well, this is the Mendit, which is quite a famous boat, run by Charlie Atkins, who was a northern boat builder, as they called him in those days. And this was after he'd finished the contract carrying chocolate crumb through from Knighton to Bourneville, and so he was carrying coal from, I'm quite sure, either Hollybank or Anglesey to Wilmot Breedens, who were on the Grand Union Canal. So this is almost the bottom lock. Next to the bottom lock, the bottom lock's a bit further down, on the so-called New 13, the Thames Valley Canal. And so, very interesting bloke was Charlie. And when he used to come into the basin, when he was carrying chocolate and crumb, I used to chat to him and all the rest of it, and it was all in sacks. And Of course, inevitably, one of these sacks had got broached. And so he used to give you a handful of this. It was a bit like, the sort of things that comes out of volcanoes, you know. That's what it looked like, anyway. I'm trying to think, what's it called? Anyway, we'll call it lava anyway, but anyway. And so I used to grab a bag of this stuff, and it would just taste like ordinary chocolate. And all they did at Cadbury's was to refine it a bit and turn it into what normally was then like a shilling bar of chocolate. But, So anyway, so this is that's Forgings and Presswork, who actually eventually then decided they would actually form a shuttle service between their factory and Hardy Spices. They were part of the same group, carrying forgings from the factory through to Hardy Spices, made the universal joint, shafting arrangements, and that was further down the Birmingham-Fazeley Canal, so past Salford Bridge. And that worked very, very well until the Ministry of Transport decided they wanted to build Spaghetti Junction on top of Salford Bridge, and so they just gave up then because it was too disruptive. Right, next one. Right, this is at Salford Bridge. Again, the whole area's totally changed. The motorway's above this area now. That was Collins's Hinges. And this, just to the right, was TS Elements Wharf. And they've got another wharf on the other side of Salford Bridge. And this is a pair of willow end boats, and there was another pair ahead. And this used to be known as a kind of maternity run. So if any of because they were family boats, and if the women were having babies and this sort of thing, they put them on this run. So the motors used to go and subcontract to TS Element, who used to run coal from, amongst other things, from the Cannock coalfields down to the GEC, who had a very large factory a bit further on. And so the butties didn't have to be used at all. So the lady concerned could continue her pregnancy and without having to start heaving and shoveling and whatever else. And so the motors would just carry on and just go up and down. And so of course, the man was earning his money, and not everybody was happy. It seemed to work very well. So there's another. I'll go for another shot. I think there's another. That's a chap called Ray White. It was not because you've got to understand that most of the boat people, and certainly on the cabin boats, had been there for generations. So they, generation after generation after generation. I mean, I'm still in touch with one of our ex-boating families, and he's traced his family back to boating in the 18th century. So it's quite something. Anyway, that is the crane, and then again, that's there's houses there. This is again all covered up by the motorway now. And where you saw the previous picture, the boats were tied on the right-hand side. That was just a bit further up. Anyway, what's happened there is that Ray has taken the crane down. It's come from Cannock or Hollybank or wherever, depending on which colliery it loaded at, and then gone through the bridge at Salford Bridge, winded round, and then going back up to GEC, ready for unloading. The coaling is, just like, just slack really. Occasionally, if they haven't screened it very well, you'd find some chunks, but most of it was rubbish. Put your fire out rather than subvert it. Next, that's TNS Elements, Princess Anne. That wasn't its original name, but when Princess Anne was born, they decided to rename it. So there it is. Actually, this boat was chopped down to tug size. I can't remember the year now, but probably during the war or just after the war, as a tug. And then actually they kept all the bits, and then they extended it back to 70 foot. Anyway, so it's still around now, but then later on people decided that no, we'll cut it back down again, so it snapped back down to 56 foot or whatever it should be. So there we are. But, I know the people, I've spoken to the people who actually own it to this day, and I've been meaning to give them this photograph, but they've got round to them. I don't know. Sorry. Yeah.
We'll have a short break now. To about 9 or something like that. I'm sure there's plenty more to go.
Oh, there's loads. Yeah, so just stop me when someone grabs the outside.
Top of glasses. See Neil for some more tickets or handy tickets in. And I asked Graham to take over for a second half.
Yeah, okay. Incidentally, stop me when you want to go home, because I mean there'll be enough photographs of it too.
We're up to 1966 at the moment.
Well, the thing is, I'm not really quite sure what's happened, but I had a problem with the memory stick, and so that's been sorted. But on the other hand, the order seems to have got slightly out of order. So never mind. Anyway, there we are. Right, okay. So, well, I mentioned about the Princess Anne. There was also, actually, at the same time, British Waterways, well, it might have been the Docks and Waterways there, but they named one of their boats Prince Charles. So there was Prince Charles and Princess Anne, but Princess Anne was Elements had, and Prince, unless they bought it off no, that's what they did. Anyway, but there were two boats named, after the birth of the two royal children. So there we are. Right, next. Right, that's another shot of the crane. I was saying that Ray White was on the maternity run then, and I don't know who the little lad is there. It's not their lad anyway. And it's got a good load on there, probably about 18, 19 tons probably or something like that. And we eventually, also, we as a company, worked with T&S Element on that same run as well. And so, I've actually taken coal from Anglesey, one of the coal loading basins in the northern Black Country down to the GEC. And so I've done that once or twice. But there we are, anyway. Right, that's Salford Bridge, incidentally. That's the original bridge, which you can barely see now because, of course, you've got the motorway, the Spaghetti Junction on top. So that's how it used to look. It's big down there. Right, next. Right, there we are. Oh, right. Well, up until 1964, the Birmingham Salvage Department were very green, but of course it wasn't referred to being green in those days. But they actually had a number of various depots and also dumps as well to carry refuse around. And they didn't have any motorboats at all, and they used horses entirely. And so here we are, and this is the top of Camp Hill Locks. That's Sampson Road Depot to the right. And this is, the boat has just been emptied at, I'm not sure what the name of the tip was, but anyway, where I don't know whether you know the Ackers Yeah, well, yeah. It was project, yeah. Yeah, the Eccles Trust, that's it. And there was a big dump there. And in fact, actually, it's quite interesting because they used to take the, well, probably a bit of a dump now, Tyseley, yes, and they used to take loaded boats to there, and then all this rubbish was handballed out, shoveled out, and there was a tramway. I mean, it was just a little, so 2-foot gauge railway which ran to the edge of the tip, and there was this truck, and so the boatman emptied into the truck, and the carriage on the top of the truck would swivel, so they just face the edge of the tip, with using a horse of course, and then they just undo the catch and this sort of thing, swivel the container on the top, and down it would go to the edge of the tip, down the other side, and that's how it was done. I mean, it was quite labour intensive, but it did the job. So there we are. And of course, the thing with joeys, you could work them, these wooden joeys, you could work them either way. So the mast that you have, the towing mast, unlike a cabin boat, which was set, this sort of thing, you couldn't just move that around. But with joeys, it was basically the mast was not particularly heavy to carry, a reasonably thick bloke. We'd just move it around. So the boat is now going backwards, so to come from further up, which is where the tip was, and the top block is just there, just out of shot. So, and at that time, of course, there was the wharf was still being used by British Waterways with bringing stuff up from London, and London basically. Right, next. That's another shot of the same thing. Notice the harnessing of the horse with the bobbins on the side there, so that the ropes didn't cut into the horse's flanks. Right, next. Again, same shot. So they're looking the other way. That's from the top lock is just here. The second lock is down the right. And of course, from there onwards, the locks used to go straight. But when they built the ring road, many years later, that to reorganise the canal. So in actual fact, now you've got you've got a lock at a different angle altogether. Not that one, but the next lock down. And then you've got to do a sharp left-hander, then followed by a sharp right-hander to get into the fourth lock. There we are. It's a sort of winterish day there. The horse has got its coat on. But actually, this picture is just the same now as it was then, I think. The railway viaduct's still there. And I think the factory building is still there, I think, probably. Right, next. Well, there we are. And that's it. But it was, I mean, the salvage department had, I don't know how many horses they had at that time, probably about a dozen, I should think, various depots. And you notice that there's nobody with a horse there, and some of these horses, they batter along by themselves, and they do it very well. They come into a lock, they know where to stop, and this sort of thing. They were quite canny. But there was one occasion I used to meet it, and he didn't want to cross over the rope and this sort of thing, and if you happened to meet at a lock, this horse would come up and lean against you. So he wanted to pat a lot that said that it was so-and-so that. I can't remember which one it was. Yeah. Right, next. Oh, right, yeah. Well, this is when you haven't got a horse. This is the alternative way of doing things. That's house coal going down Walsall locks to to either Franks's or the Co-op. From the Worley-Essington Canal at the top of Walsall Locks, you've got the colour of the water is quite attractive. You go down the flight, and then because it wasn't well, I mean, if you hadn't got a horse there, you might well anyway they were just barreling it down, and you got down to the bottom, and then to get to Walsall on Walsall Wharf, which there is still a wharf there, but it's nothing like because it's an art gallery there now. It was just a dead end. But there was quite a lot. There was Franks's coal yard, there was a Co-op coal yard, and there was another one there. And they all got their coal from Cannock, and it was quite good stuff. House coal, as you can see, quite big lumps of the stuff. Lost really the money then because I took that in colour.
Is he going uphill there?
No, going downhill. Downhill. They're coming off the Worley. So the tug had brought up. That was probably early Thomas, I would have thought. And they brought, about 3 or 4 boats, maybe 4 or 5, and to the top of the locks. And then, I mean, it wasn't worth taking the tug down. So, and you just. But I don't know whether I can't remember any stabling up there. I mean, there must have been years before, but I can't remember. But this would be about, well, again, early 60s, I would think. Right. Okay. Oh yeah, that's. I'm sure the order's got very mixed up on this. Anyway, that is Smelling Gasworks. I mean, you'd never know that it was there at all. I mean, the tow bridge just quite normally runs by. The gasworks has completely disappeared. But that's the.
Didn't that call French's Bridge?
Yeah, opposite. Yeah. Well, that's on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. So, and in fact, we actually got some. We bought a cargo of clay from the Walsall Canal. I'm trying to think. I think it was a firm called Ward's, and they used to make plant pots, and near Moxley. And I remember we loaded this clay. Oh, God, it was terrible because it got everywhere. Just and hardly, you were slipping around it and all the rest of it. But anyway, we actually emptied the clay, formed a clay bund in front of the where the entrance now is, well, it was obviously. And but anyway, that's the might be the T's. I can't remember, but anyway, there we are. And so that was just waiting to load tar or whatever to take up to Midlands tar distillers at Wigley. So it was only a short run. And it was on the same run where the photograph of the Gifford was taken, and in this occasion the motorboat was being used. Next, that's the Spey coming from Wolverhampton Gasworks, and that's nearing Albury. And I mean, some of the smarter boatmen used to scrub the boards on the top of the tanks, and they look really nice, they're flash strips, and they look nice and white in the summer. Interestingly, Wolverhampton Gasworks, which is sort of near Gorsebrook Bridge down the Wolverhampton rocks, was where I think in the 1880s, and they did a film. I think the Americans did a version of this sort of thing. There was an attempt to try and create a record of taking a balloon that was higher than anybody else had done. And I can't remember what the film was called now, but I mean they messed up all the actual narrative of it. Really, it was a couple of blokes that went up. Anyway, there was a woman involved in the film, of course, so it had to be sort of thing. So there we are. So it was all so, and they very nearly died actually because they got so cold and ran out of oxygen. And I think in the end, well, almost ran out of oxygen. One of them managed to sort of pierce the balloon and sort of, enough for it to gradually come down, so he actually survived the attempt. But there we are. Anyway, that's approaching Albury from cargo of tar or whatever from gasworks. Right, next one. All right, yeah, that's the Stour. That's Midland Tidal Sewers where all this tar used to finish up. And that's Violet Law, that is. And I got quite friendly with her, and she offered me a cup of tea, but she said, right, you're not coming in with your boots like that. She got axed the carpet on the... And she, all the brasses were all shined up and all the plates and goodies there, And most of the boats, well, all of them, have got Bollingers, simple Bollingers with no gearbox, so you have to reverse the stroke of the engine to be able to reverse something. I mean, most of them, obviously going down locks, you just would knock the engine out of gear and strap the boat down the locks. And if you're going uphill, you just knock again, boat out of gear, and then you'd get whoever's with you to draw up, and you just come nicely against the top gate without bashing anything around. It's all done very, very carefully, very smoothly. Right, next. That's the Osk. That's coming from Walsall Gas from Plec, and so I don't know. I can't remember the steering, but you wouldn't get that sort of loaded boat down the Walsall Canal now, I tell you. I think the Oscars died. I think. Like all these wooden boats, you've got to just keep at them all the time. Right, next. And that's the Oscar again, that's Plec Gasworks on the right hand side. That's all disappeared, of course, as you might imagine. There we are. Decent logo. Okay, next. This is Clayton's yard again, looking towards Wolverhampton. Self-explanatory, some empty boats, probably waiting maintenance or something like that, I'm not really quite sure. Right, next. Again, similar. That's the Pearl over there. I don't know what the butty is here, but they, the cabin boats, or the more long-distance cabin boats, used to get the full treatment. That's just TC, brackets O limited. But some of them, were very nicely signed, written out, Thomas Clayton Limited, and the firm was related, or when it was originally set up, to fellows Morton Clayton. So the Clayton side of it were related back in the 1850s or 60s, something like that. And but they went, whereas Thomas Clayton's went into liquids, and that's all they did. They didn't go into general cargo at all. Whereas fellows Morton Clayton, they did general cargo. They tended to eschew things like coal, which was a bit dirty and nasty and this sort of thing. So they used to do the more high value stuff. Okay, next. That's the Stour. Yeah, again, that's Violet Law's boat. They did have a pair, at least one pair, operating between Banbury, where there was another TARDIS tours, and Solihull, and Solihull Gasworks. And so they had at least one pair, right until relatively late on, and they never came into, not very rarely anyway, occasionally they would come into Albury, but most of the time they'd just go between Solihull and Banbury. And that must be quite, with a lot of locks, but on the other hand it was in the country all the time, so you were sort of in this gloomy sort of, the air quality and the water quality, as you can see, was pretty awful in those days. Right, next. That's, so it's up to the colour there, but anyway, that's the Umea, which I think is a river in India, I think, but there we are. But there we are, you can see, and you can see there's a boat there with half the cabin missing and all the rest of it, and you could say, probably 2 weeks later, it would all be wonderful, it would all be done there. I'll tell you what, they didn't hang about, they certainly had some good boat builders in those days. I don't know what the boat is next door. Right, next. On the Spey. The Spey is still going. There is a consortium of enthusiasts that keep the Spey running. I mean, that's probably been rebuilt about 3 or 4 times, well, more or less. It's had, you just have to keep up them all the time, and so that is still going. And also, there's the Tay, which a personal friend of mine had for many years, but he sold that, and it was pretty well taken apart. I think by the time that it was rebuilt, all that was left were the metal parts. It was really basically, measurements were taken and it was just got rid of, sort of thing. I mean, sometimes, it's not a question of repair. You just have to sort of, it's a complete replica. And that's the junction there with the, if you turned right, that's the flight of rocks up to Tickney. Next. Again, there's still, I don't know why there's so many of these, but there we are. Right, we've seen that, so let's go next again. Oh, right, now this is in central Birmingham. This has changed out of all recognition. This is at Sherborne Street. Sherborne Street Wharf. Now it's, it's flats and everything, and there's also an extension of the basin that's been built here. That big black side of the building there is the old Fellows Walkman Clayton warehouse, which still exists, but now they're loft apartments. Anyway, this is, they've brought, these are Willow Wren boats, although the motorboat's on the other side, I don't know what it is, but it's still in British Waterways colours. And they've brought up timber up from Brentford. So they presumably just emptied that. But that's the Dabchick eventually became a hotel boat along with the Mallard, which was which previously had been the elm for the Elwich Canal Company. Anyway, I'm going into detail here, but there we are. Right, next. This is, well, again, boats. This is near where we used to empty with the GEC. And I don't know what's gone. This Stuart seems to be just floating about, so I'm not quite sure what's happened there. But the GEC factory was just down there. And they had quite an efficient emptying system. They got this overhead crane called a Telfer. It used to come down. It's the biggest grab I think I've ever seen. And I remember once having a cup of tea, and they dropped the grab in very accurately into the boat. And they took sort of like about 3 tons out, and they go, and the tea went everywhere. So I was like, Right, next. Well, that's another of Element's boats. This is the Ben. which I think that's still around now. That used to belong to a carpet firm in Kidderminster. They used it for carrying coal, but I think it's Crossley's, I'm not quite sure, but one of the Kidderminster firms anyway, carpet firms. And there was a butty that was built with it. I don't know, probably Harrison or something like that. And the Matilda, Ben and Matilda, what they were named after, I don't know.
Are those pylons there?
Well, they are electricity cables, yeah, sort of, yeah. Right, next. Oh, right, this is Horace Foster, with Charlie and Horace Foster, father and son. And there, in actual fact, in the background, you can see the crane for the GEC, and they're working their way back up the so-called New 13. And you'll see in the next picture, you'll see the Princess Anne. But anyway, that's Horace. Fortunately, he died of cancer.
Used to be a Wolverhampton boat.
He did, yeah, he did, yeah.
Under an H.
Yeah, that's it, well, he got an H, yeah, that's it. And Charlie, but they were characters. Yeah, I got on very well with them, quite well, and the rest of the family. Those lock cottages have disappeared. They were perfectly good, but the Canal River, well not Canal River, Bishwater Race said, oh no, we don't really want them, this sort of thing, so down they went. And there's so many of the lock cottages and other cottages, from various canal staff, that have just been demolished and didn't need to be demolished. I mean, they could have just sold for £1 or something like that, but I mean, that was vandalism as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there was all those cottages down and various buildings down at the bottom of the 21 locks at Wolverhampton. It's quite a little hamlet almost there, and they all went. Right, okay, next. That's the Princess Anne. That's Charlie there. The smartest of boatmen in terms of turnout, but then, this is on the BCN, that wasn't the thing really, basically. I mean, they were day boatmen, so they didn't really have to live on the boats. They all, they used to do a day's work, tie them up, and then catch the bus and go home sort of thing. I mean, it's better paid than cabin boating, I have to say. That's it. There's the front wheel of my bike. That's the so that's coming out of the first lock, and that's the second lock of the Perry Bar flight or U13. Right, next. That is just above the second lock. That's forgings and presswork, and they invested quite a lot in new kit. They put proper modern handling facilities in. You can see all the stillages and all this sort of thing. New boats they had built, and very efficient until, as I say, as I said before, it was decided that they build this Gravelly Hill interchange, i.e. Spaghetti Junction, on top of the junction at Salford Bridge. And there was so much disruption that they thought, no, they will go back to road transport, which was a great pity, really. Great pity. Yeah. Right, next. Yeah, and that's, I mean, new tugs, I think, for E.C. Jones's tugs from London, and, that was shortly, well, it was 1958, 59, something like that. And they so organised the length of the boats and the tug, so in fact they didn't have to separate them, so they could go into each lock without having to mess about. No, it's all worked very, very efficiently. Next. Yeah, that's I was just taken from the magazine. As you can see, there's the overhead gantry, and and these stillages full of these castings coming in. No, so you could load a boat within, I don't know, half an hour or so. You know, just plonk, 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 and then the tug would come up and stick in the lock, and off it would go. It's about 3 miles down the canal to Forges of Presswork by Chester Road, near, well, Midlands really, basically. Next. And this is the other end. This is at Hardy Spicer's. A bit more sophisticated emptying there. They had a man, but there's the overhead gantry, but there was an overhead electric engine, you might say, and he would drive the thing out from the end of the production line, which was through there, straight, you know, alongside the boat, take the stillages out and plonk them at the end of the production line. It was all good stuff, and it shows, you know, with a bit of investment, what could be done. Anyway, that's all flattened now. No, outside of either the Forges of Presswork or Hardy Spicer. Probably all made in China, I suppose. Right, next. Again, that's another shot by Forgings of Presswork. This is timber going up to, I'm trying to think, I think it went up the sheep wash arm, which now has disappeared, but it was at the, used to go off at the end of West Bromwich 8 locks, or Riders Green locks, as we call them now. And,
So bridge here.
Great Bridge.
a Great Bridge, yeah, it's Great Bridge.
Great
Yeah.
Bridge.
A Great Bridge. And that's the red shank and the green shank, and I'm trying to remember about his name. It doesn't really matter, I don't remember him anyway. But always, you can see the boats are pretty smart in this sort of thing. Off the way, and that had been loaded at Redford Dock, you know, just off the Thames. Next. That's the Silver Jubilee, looking a bit battered. That had been, I think that was one of Potter's motorboats from Stoke-on-Trent, and they'd sold up. And there was a firm called Peter Key and Son, and they bought a number of the boats, including this one, and they used it. They used the boats on local traffic, but they, you know, round the BC end, boats just used to get knocked about. They weren't really looked after, to be quite honest, to a large extent, and you can see that. I mean, I remember seeing the boat when it was up in Stoke-on-Trent, and it looked really quite smart, but then, you know, it's looking a bit not in its best condition here. And that's coming up to, I'm sure, quite busy. It's at the bottom of the new 13 again, you know, sort of thing. It's quite a bit of traffic knocking about in this day. So, there we are. Next, that's one of Peter Key's tugs. That's the Judith Ann. Taking a string of boats back up to the collieries, having emptied at in central Birmingham, in Bellis and Morecambe's. Now again disappeared. Somewhere where they're doing a big new development near Icknield Port, near Rockport Road. But you can see as well, and there's probably another one behind that one as well. So, round here, because there are long lockless levels, they could use tugs and trains and boats, and that was the way things, well, latterly speaking, were operating. This is just about to go on the Earl Bridge.
Interesting to point out there, Graham, how the tug is loaded, the equivalent to a loaded boat.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Compared with the empty one behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that they can put the bow in the water.
Yeah. Right, next. Right, this is the winter of 1963. Bloody cold. And that's the that well, you can see the cam, which is one of a class of new butties that British Waterways have built, but they were never very popular with boatmen. They steered like dead whales, to be quite honest. They've got no proper shape to them at all. They were not well liked. I don't know what that's. I think that might be the pinner, but anyway, that's a large Northwich ex-Grand Union motorboat on the outside. What the other two are not, I don't know. But they were all just tied up because basically, although they'd broken the ice around here, you know, the ice was too thick once you got into the countryside. And in fact, I mean, the boats were held up. This is why, in actual fact, British Waterways finally gave up narrow canal carrying because they were having to pay their boatman laying money, it's called, and you know they were laid up for at least a couple of months, if not a bit longer. I mean, it really was an awful winter for those that remember it. So right, next. Yeah, this is. Yeah, right. This is approaching Walsall through Pleck, and this is we had an order for carrying aluminium ingots from Walsall to Liverpool for export to Canada. Strange enough, and in fact, strange enough, at the same time, or a little bit later, there was another canal carrying company bringing aluminium to the ex-Canada up to the Midlands, to Alcan. But anyway, you know, I never understood it, but there we are. Anyway, what had happened was that they wanted an extra pair of boats, and you could see that we hadn't actually. We were in the process of restoring these. I mean, the Cyprus was showed there, still in Waterways colours. That was all right, but this one needed quite a lot of work on it, so we provided new sets of stands and planks and everything else. But, you know, needs must, so although the boats weren't ready to be used, we had to use them. So there we are. Right, next one. Well, that's the back of me. That's one of our motorboats, the Yeoford. And this was, it was the firm that was actually providing the aluminium. It was scrap aluminium, and they used to melt it down, make it into ingots and this sort of thing. And then they've got a forklift truck with a jib on it, and which worked out quite well. And you know, dropped the lifts into the boat, and then off we went to Liverpool. That was quite a successful contract. That was. We did a number of runs. That's the ash behind. That's been fully loaded. And in fact, literally the boats were ready to be clossed up and to leave. This is just outside Walsall. Walsall, well, it wasn't a basin in those days. It was just a dead end a bit further down. But this is a narrow sort of stop place, so it was just handy to load. Right. Okay. Next. Well, there's a shot of the same thing. Anyway, that was the end of the Walsall Canal as then was. Where that building now is, was then, is now the Walsall Art Gallery. But there was no winding hole there, so you know you had to back down, which is a bit awkward with a pair of boats. Next, another shot, we get clossed up and everything. Next again. Oh right, this is again. I don't know how we got these out of order, but nevertheless. Going back to that timber that I mentioned about on the Trent, this is on the Trent. This is a barge from Hull, and we were then sort of laying the cargo, and it was just boards in bills of lading, into the narrowboats, and it was warm back, it was sort of July or something like that in 1965, or August or something like that, and it was quite hard work really, you know, in the heat. But anyway, it worked out, and we're happy, you know, happy to do it. It's a railway bridge before, and this is the backwater, the river up there that went to Newark Nether Lock. So it was just handy to stick the barge up there, and the rest of the boats were stuck on the way. Okay. You know, here we are at Newark itself, just waiting to set sail, more or less. And and we got family boats there, so you know the butty in the middle belongs to a small firm, a bit smaller than us actually, Seymour Roseblade, and that was the our Linda, which was formerly the Victoria, and the Barbara, which was formerly the Arden, but anyway, names change. You know, we're still in Waterways colours, the Achilles, and then the Collingwood, which is on the outside. So this is, but Newark Castle is just behind us, sort of in the shop.
So that's the town lock then, isn't it?
It's the town lock here, which was smaller than they hadn't actually enlarged it then. Right, next. Yeah, that's a nice picture. I mean, that's Phoebe Anderson with the 3 kids. So she's got the, you know, and I mean, you know, sometimes think, well, how on earth you know, bring 3 kids up on a boat, but they're all nice and clean and tidy, as you can see. You know, yeah. Yeah, I mean, all the kids now in their 50s, so I can't remember. But that's it, yeah. I don't know if Phoebe's still alive, actually. She's a bit older than me, but not very much. And that was Jack Monk's kids. I mean, obviously I'm talking of these names, which you obviously won't know, but these all boating families from years and years before. But it was really nice weather, lovely weather. Okay. Oh, yeah, here we are. This is in Liverpool. We're loading pitch for Oldbury. And so we've got a small fleet of boats there. You can see there's a ship behind us. And so we were just waiting to be called ahead to load via the ship's derricks. Because if you did that, and the cargo didn't go to quay, then you've got quite a considerable improvement in the rate, because you could charge the customer part of the rate that he would have paid if it had gone to quay. So it worked quite well. Next one. Yeah, well, the colour one and this sort of thing. There we are. And we're not loaded yet, but again, waiting to be called forward. But the thing was, when you went from dock to dock, you can see there was only one set of gates, so they'd have to lower or raise the dock that you were next going into, because otherwise, you know, if they had locks in between, it would have worked all right, but they weren't. They were almost like flash locks sort of thing. Right, next one. Right, that's the Cyprus having loaded, and he put on, well, yeah, it seems a reasonable load there, about sort of like 18 tons, something like that. But what he hadn't realised was the fact that he loaded in salt water. So when he got into Liverpool locks, the bottom lock, and filled the lock up, the boat went down. Which rather alarmed him. so yeah, it's yeah. It looks a bit lost in the middle of the. Oh yeah, right. rambling on a bit, I think it's time that... well, anyway, that's probably a good shot to finish up on. So, but I could go on, so I won't...
I can't believe that somebody that's still alive.
Be careful.
No, I thought this was the dim and distant past. Don't mean to be rude, but it's just, well, it would be great to be able to see all these boats now in, in everyday.
Well, some of them are, I mean, you go to these canal rallies and this sort of thing, they're all being done up and all the rest of it.
True. But they're not carriers anymore.
Oh, no,
sadly. And really appreciate you bringing all these photographs with you tonight.
Yeah, sorry that they seem to be out of. I had some problems with the memory stick and this sort of thing. I'm not quite sure what they seem to have got out of order.
The problem with the memory stick arose from the last time that you gave this talk.
Yeah.
It wasn't ejected safely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be in Graham's bad books if I don't eject the memory stick safely tonight. Thank you once again, Graham.
Thank you.